Hi, everyone. So many creatures and plants communicate, as I'm sure you know, but humans tell stories. And so it may actually be one of our defining characteristics as Homo sapiens. And we use stories to pass on knowledge and culture, to form social bonds, to invent concepts like money, to define our gods. And all of you here are storytellers, and you're very important storytellers, I would add. And firstly, it's important that we define what is a story. So my definition is the story is a narrative that's either true or fictitious in prose or in verse, and it's designed to interest or amuse or instruct the listener or reader. And again, the focus here is actually on the hearer or reader. It's not the writer, it's not the presenter. Now, for scientists and science communicators, the stakes with audience are quite high because people are looking to science and tech to find answers for a more sustainable future, among other things. And today I want to empower you, Master Naturalist community, with the tools to make science information engaging and relevant. So whether that's a live presentation, online video, or in your latest publication. So this goes beyond just presenting facts, right? It's into human connection. So who am I to tell you all these things? My job depends on human connection and story. I'm a writer, director, and performer, and I've been working in theater in New York City for over 10 years now. I'm also master naturalist, and I'm in the process of getting my certificate in sustainable garden design at New York Botanical Garden. I have also created several stories in different mediums, from theater to podcasting, that work in educational settings to communicate science. So I know a little bit about the cost of bad storytelling, professionally and personally. I can write the most terrific piece of theater I want, but if I can't engage, if I can't speak loudly enough, if I can't hold court in a room, it's truly all for nothing. And maybe you felt that too. Maybe you lost a grant, or you had an inattentive classroom, or you didn't know what to do with your hands when you were talking. I've been there. And you probably had all the information that you needed, but it's really maybe some disorganization or fear around communicating it. So presentation expert, his name is David Odie. He has a model that he calls the ART, the art of connection. And each of these stands for how you want your audience to respond. So A, accept your information. R, remember your information. And T, take action. And today we're going to look at that, the art of connection. And I'm going to invite you to think differently about your role in giving presentations and give you some story frameworks that you can use right away. We're going to cover what you say, how you say it, what you're doing while you're saying it, and with the goal of essentially creating these rich, memorable presentations that stay with audiences and spur them to action. So I'd love to hear from you about what you think makes a strong, effective communicator. You can either shout it out, or you can drop it in the chat. And let me see if I can pull up that chat. It's always nice to hear from you up top. Words, adjectives, can be speakers that you know. Yep, knowledge on the subject coming in, definitely. Passion, so great. We're going to return to these later. Humor, could not agree more. Someone doesn't take themselves too seriously. Reading your audience. Wow, you all wrote this presentation that I'm about to give. And this is all the key points. Sincerity, yeah. You definitely want to believe you're this communicator presenter and respect the audience's time. Huge for me. If somebody goes over their allowed amount of time, really starts to send a little bubbles of unevenness throughout the room. These are great points. You've touched on a lot that we're going to come back to. So first, let's talk about some rules of storytelling and to help structure the qualities that we've discussed, like sincerity, like reading your audience, like humor. So I'm going to break down some of these qualities into tools that you can use and practices that you can apply right now to give clearer presentations through embracing your storytelling capabilities. Because again, you are storytellers. Yes, say it again. So have you ever had to sit through a presentation that did not apply to you, with like lots of data and lots of facts and nothing that applied to your circumstances? It is terribly boring. It is absolutely so dull and often insufferable. So your information doesn't go anywhere if it doesn't meet the needs of your audience. That's the first principle here. So how do you find out what the needs of your audience are? You have to understand why your audience is there listening to you. Or most audiences, in short, are egocentric. They want to hear about things that directly affect them and their community. So get clear on what you are there to do for them. So what do you, again, this is something else you can drop in the chat or speak out. What do you currently do to get to know your audience before you give a presentation, teach class, communicate with any kind of audience that you're involved with? Find out what their interests are. Ask what they hope to ask questions. These are all great. I'm curious if you ask these questions by email. Do you ask them in the room? Because these are, I mean, granted, often depends on the circumstances. Personally greeting audiences I'm seeing coming up. That's always nice to give actually that warmth that we were talking about. Yeah. I mean, if this is a presentation, this question, what can I do for you, can be asked in advance, so you can actually structure your whole presentation accordingly. Why are you being invited to speak? What is the audience hoping to get out of this? What are their expectations? Who's organized this event? Who's the boss? Knowing, and then as you've mentioned, greeting people, knowing some individuals by name can also give you a sense of legitimacy and rapport with the group. We're going to talk more about that later. So, if you're writing for a journal, for instance, you might want to know about who's this subscriber base here? Who reads this kind of publication? Who are you trying to reach with this, etc. I'd like to actually do a little creative writing exercise with you all right now. So think of an audience that you recently presented to. It could be a classroom of students. Christy and I were just talking about our classrooms that we were just teaching. And I'm going to ask you to write a very short 3 to 4 sentence day in the life story of one of these audience members. So in this day, your audience member should encounter at least one problem that your field, your science relates to. So for instance, it might be if you're presenting to a group of university freshmen who are majoring in, let's see, for my circumstances, they're majoring in acting at the university I teach at. I'm thinking about a day in the life in which they would encounter a need to touch on their background in theater histories. So they're in a meeting about a new play that they want to develop, and the director mentions, oh, this play is very Chekhovian. Oh, wow, I really wish I'd paid attention when Kate was talking in class about Chekhov. So take a few minutes for yourself now to write this day in the life story. Again, try to think of a singular audience member, and your audience member in this day of the life should encounter at least one problem that your science relates to. And when you're ready, if you feel so moved, you can drop it in the chat. Any responses anyone want to share? You can also say, don't want to share, but give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Great. So Lauren's just shared sharing EMT skills with moms and related to their children's health and safety. So I imagine that's enormously relevant. If you were to break it down into a singular episode, a mom might have had an instance in which she was very concerned for her child's well-being. I remember my mom talking about, you know, if I bumped my head or something when I was a kid, you could make it very personal, very specific. Anyone else want to share? Paul showed freshman college students liberal arts introduction to sustainable practices on campus. I mean, Paul, I wonder if that's even how do sustainable practices relate to a freshman in college's everyday life? So that could be something that they're seeing on social media every day and want to have a better grasp of. That might even be like, why do you think we have these composting bins around? You know, something that can localize them in the space. Grace says, sharing food cultural competency to eager learners at a local nonprofit, leaning to my experiences in education and connecting on the grounds of helping one another grow. Food cultural competency. I mean, the fact that you have eager learners is a great start. Again, I would think about what's a time in their day, in their everyday lives that they might encounter the issue of food cultural competency. But it's terrific, you know, that your learners are eager. Just this beginning to start like this really builds up imaginative containers for our presentations. Edie says, teaching people how to navigate an ancestry resource offered by our library. I mean, yeah, and again, trying to bring that down to just one individual's wondering. So is it like, have you ever wondered, you know, have you ever found an old box of family relics in your basement and been unable to, and there's a lot of mystery on these objects or names you can't recognize. The more that you can get specific with these words and pictures, that's really what stays with audiences time and again. And by words, I mean the phrases you use, and pictures, I mean the images that you show and experiences you create in your mind's eye. So let's get even more specific now in our audience. And so your specific purpose. A specific purpose states the topic of your presentation and includes a number of main points in your speech. All specific purposes start with a verb that directly acts on the audience, like to inform or to persuade. And so for my talk today, a vague purpose would be, I'm going to talk about storytelling, but a specific purpose would be to equip my audience with, which are a group of master naturalist scientists, with 4 guiding principles of storytelling. So your specific purpose may start with to inform or to persuade. Perhaps your storytelling exercise actually helped you a bit here. So let's use that same audience you were just talking about in your exercise and write down a specific purpose. And you can share these in the chat. Again, these are sentences that begin with a verb that acts on the audience and then ends with a specific number of segments. Audience, horticulture centered garden club, how to plant for biodiversity using regionally sourced natives, how to see your backyard. I don't know what see is short for, but I like it. So for instance, Michelle, to get even more specific, you might say to equip my audience oh, even better, to certify my audience of this garden club with 10 crucial facts to planting for biodiversity, for example. And granted, no one's looking at their presentations right now, so they might not even know how much wisdom they're dropping. But when you can get this data around, it really helps you clarify exactly what you're there to do and how you're interacting with this audience. Any more? And Grace, to empower my audience with 6 different cultural food needs in the local community to broaden their understanding of what specific communities need at local food pantries. That's excellent. And to inform my audience of data supporting the health impacts of new American integration. Whew. Yes, doing a lot there, Grace. Your first one is really, the first part of your sentence is especially specific. 6 different, I wonder if you could thread those together, or perhaps you have 2 different specific purposes. Maybe you're informing your audience of 10 pieces of data supporting the health impacts, etc. Christy, to empower my students with knowledge of 5 main steps for enhancing wildlife habitat in the woods. Excellent. To inform the audience of ways to be sustainable while at college and upon graduating. Terrific, Paul. So your audience might be to inform my audience of freshman college students with, X number of ways to be sustainable while at college and while graduating. It's just having a number in there. Because once we have these specific purposes, we can actually start building out and build some structure around our presentations. It really is a nice anchor so you don't get lost in the sauce, is the technical term, of all the knowledge that you have, because you all are experts in your field, and it can be difficult. How much am I going to, how can I cover so much material in so little time? But you really can't. You should really focus on a finite number of points. So again, you're a storyteller. So when you share information, you're making the audience the hero of your presentation story, and you're asking them to go through a transformation. And you're telling, and again, a story has content and form. So content, like we discussed, are the words and pictures that you use and bring the presentation alive in your audience's mind. Structure is what holds it all together. Randy Olson has a book called Houston, We Have a Narrative, in which he presents metrics for analyzing narrative structure. So let's first start with some non-narrative structures, because you'll catch on to these pretty quickly. When speakers use the word "and" too frequently, it becomes a list, becomes a boring non-narrative list. Too many facts and not a meaningful picture. For example, this study shows this and that and the other thing and the other thing, and so on and so forth. And the trap we fall into is being, another trap we fall into, apart from that, is being overly narrative. And that's using too many words like despite, however, yet. So that might sound like, our study shows this key fact despite this other fact. However, this factor means this other thing for us. And yet this is also present. So again, it's not a meaningful picture when we're using these non-narrative structures. So a really simple framework can help. Now, you've heard of some classic structures, I'm sure, beginning, middle, and end. I'd like to offer some other frameworks that you may not know about. So in her book, Resonate, Nancy Duarte uses a sparkline structure to analyze and build her presentations. And that structure creates these powerful stories by utilizing tension and release. She suggests that switching the audience back and forth between a state of what is and what could be, sort of like thinking about it as alternating between challenge and solution, pain, pleasure, you know? So let's actually use this time to take a minute of maybe 2 sentences in your field about what is, the state of what is in your field and the state of what could be. We can share it in the chat. Any offerings? Nice. Michelle has a photo of a typical English garden as sort of a what is. I'm excited to see what could be. There we go. Pictures of wildlife within blooming native plants. Lovely. Matthew and Linda, what is the structure of the soil's pore? It's a frequent tilling. And what could be the use of a broad fork to improve the soil by allowing it to retain moisture naturally? Lori, what is roadsides full of invasives? What could be native wildflowers? Exactly. These are so rich. And actually what you're all doing naturally is you're actually truly using pictures. These pictures are very evocative in my mind. The contrast is so stark. So this is, whoa, Michelle has more. What is yard filled with mosquitoes? What could be? An oasis. Terrific. What could be? Birds feeding baby birds. Lovely. So you get the idea. Is again, tension release, state of what is and what could be. Next slide here. You know, writer Dan Rome argues that clear storylines are our best defense against confusion. And so for Rome, the storyline depends on what you want to do. So are you changing the audience's information, abilities, actions, belief? And he has several different structures for presentations. One's called a report, one's an explanation, one's a pitch and a drama. And I wanted to look at an explanation because it seemed most relevant to our needs. This might be an academic paper or a lecture. And this one has a few steps, right? We have, again, what is the lay of the land? Where are we now? We go into the roadmap of here's the route we're going to take to get to our destination. We take that first step. Here are the next steps. We're almost there. Let's look back on how far we've come. And finally, we've arrived. I think these questions that Dan poses at the bottom are really evocative as you're shaping something in this structured line of, do we all agree on the destination, or do we, you know, let's see how much we've learned and can we repeat it on our own? So actually, I wanted to try another little writing step here. Let's write a sentence for your lay of the land. Actually, pick one of these steps that you would like to write a sentence about. Like it might be the lay of the land, which is similar to your what is slide, or it might be a roadmap slide offering. Like Michelle's lay of the land slides might include a typical English garden or the yard full of mosquitoes. For Michelle, the roadmap is how to adapt garden magazine design plans, swapping out the non-native plants with native plants. Oh, very exciting. Yeah, do we agree on the route? Very interesting question for that sort of proposition. Lush. Okay, good. Going to move on to one more structure. I love this one. Oh, Paul had one first. Slide showing a timeline of GHG reduction achieved over a 20-year period and the remaining path forward to achieve net zero energy for the campus. Very exciting. Yep. Very clear map of roadmap ahead. One more structure I want to talk about, which I'm a big fan of, is the hook, meet, and payoff. So this is from a company called Fast Forward, which is a consulting group who helps build brand stories. And the hook is a bold statement to engage the audience right away. So this could be a rhetorical question, could be a personal anecdote, could be a big idea, not an agenda slide. An agenda slide is the anti-hook. It tells people what's coming, and it's also a recipe for everyone to sit back and snooze. But the meat is how you organize your content, and that in a way that makes sense to your audience. It could be like 7 things you need to know about storytelling. It could be a timeline. Any way to break down your presentation into chewable, tasty bites You may have already written a first draft of this inside your specific purpose statement. You may have said, oh, this is, let's go back to what's in the chat. Christy might be the 5 main steps for enhancing wildlife habitat in the woods. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the meat of Christy's presentation. The payoff here serves several roles. So it's a clear conclusion, and it's more than, okay, I'm done. It lets you summarize and wrap up. You connect it back to your hook. And remember, you want someone to take action here. So you have to ask the audience to commit to the next action you want from them, essentially. Presentations without actions are merely noise. Now, getting detailed allows you, again, bring these words and pictures that you're going to use in these hook, meets, and payoff to life. Let's focus on this hook, because I think it's a really exciting possibility. So what are some exciting tidbits, quotes, stories that we can use to open up your presentations? You may have already used them in the past. It might be a photograph. Have a think and please share in the chat if you have one. I used one. I used a quote as my hook up top. Icebreaker. What sort of weather are you feeling like today? Interesting. Do you know, I always think of an icebreaker as sort of adjacent to the presentation, because I feel like the hook here is meant to tie into the fabric of what you're about to do. But if there's a way to tie your icebreaker into what you're about to talk about, that would be amazing. Sort of make it very relevant to your audience's lives. If somehow you could connect the weather you're feeling like today into what you're about to talk about, that might be really useful. Any more? Yeah, why is any of this important to you as a new student? Yeah, that's a great, I mean, it's in a very bold, it's very provocative. It's probably what some students are thinking. They're like, how on earth is this relevant to me? Oh, audiophile, name that bird, Lesh. You're getting the hang of it. Exactly. It's something that's not an agenda slide. It's something that's going to make the audience members lean in a little bit, get them excited. So moving on. So neuroscience tells us to connect on an emotional level in many studies. Audiences need to receive information from a trusted source. Otherwise, it goes nowhere. Decision-making happens in the emotional area of the brain, and first impressions are formed in seconds. So engagement's an emotional connection or involvement. Connection before content, empathy before evidence is the saying. There's a study, a Harvard study by Amy Cuddy in the book Presence, which notes that people judge you on 2 factors when they first meet you. Can I trust this person, and can I respect this person? Also known as warmth and competence. And these are 2 key factors to exerting influence. Really interestingly, Cuddy says that most people, especially in a professional context, believe that competence is the more important factor. After all, they want to prove that they're smart and talented enough to handle your business. But actually, warmth or trustworthiness is the most important factor in how people evaluate you, because confidence is only established after trust is established. So I'm not going to talk about competence because you're all competent. I'm taking that for granted. But I want to talk about how we communicate warmth. Do we have any thoughts on this? Let's brainstorm for a variety of settings, because we're also now in Zoom world often. So how do we communicate this over a screen? How do we do this in papers? How do we do this in teaching in front of a classroom? Any adjectives come to mind? or any tactics that you've used. Somebody mentioned at the top of this class that they greeted everyone as they were coming in the room. That's often effective. Thanking the audience for taking time from their busy lives. Yep, so understanding that they've got a lot happening. There's a lot of noise outside that room. So it's a chance to still with you. Very nice. People who open with hold all questions to the end. Yes, I encourage questions in the presentation. I'd agree with you on that. I often find that it's feels a bit, well, I won't say that. In class, we have someone different choose to play the music to play us in that day, helps us get to know the students and generates good conversation and connection. That's lovely. And also shows gives audience members / students a chance to participate and show their tastes and show their multi-dimensionality as human beings who also like other things. A really important one for me in person is eye contact. And that's looking people in the eyes and knowing their names in the room. I think it also comes with, as Christy sort of noted here, is getting personal and letting your humanity in the room and sharing personal information. And maybe as Lori is suggesting here, and Matthew and Linda for that matter, is that there's lots of noise outside the room and we're here to be present together. And also we're humans here. We're, you know, let's talk and let's be in dialogue. Got one more little exercise for you. Another little brainstorm about, I'd love to hear just an idea. You don't have to write out the whole thing, but like a short hook or a quick personal anecdote that describes what drove you to present the information you're presenting. So what did this information mean to you when you first learned it, and what makes it so compelling that it must be shared? Christy, I went on a hike with family members who remarked how beautiful the forest was with all the fern in the understory and said it reminded them of Fern Gully. Then that's when I knew I had work to do. Very good. Love it when an anecdote ends with that kind of sentence. That's when I knew I had work to do. How do you know where you are? Natives create a sense of place. That's a great provocation, Michelle. I would love to hear for you, you know, when did you first start thinking of native plants, or when did you first learn this information? So just thinking about this in terms of communicating warmth, when we talk from our own first person experiences, it often helps us bring our humanity into the room. Maybe it was a native plant that caught your eye and you fell deeply in love. Can't wait for Matthew, and then I'll move on. I think when we add our bit of ourselves in this way into the work, it has a really magnetic quality. It really does. A professor talked about restoring the Niagara River Gorge, and I was stunned people didn't want it done. Who doesn't want to live in a beautiful place? Oh, okay, yeah, now we're on something. How you give an example of how you failed at what you're currently espousing. Oh, yeah, that's great. I love hearing about. I mean, personally, I love it when people confess that they are very, it makes them feel very human, and it's again very warm. And then the double bonus is that you get to show how competent you are now because you've recovered from this misunderstanding. That's excellent. Okay, one more to get through. I'm going to speak about presentations for a moment, specifically and away from papers. I want to talk about presenting, which is just a skill. It has to be practiced, and it has to be practiced in the right way so that you have the correct muscle memory. You have to know how to best prepare yourself. You need to know how much time you need to prepare, not just in writing the presentation, but in practicing it, and how much time you need to get ready right before you give it. So some things that I do, if I don't have time to prepare, I will write out a script. And if I do have time, I will record myself speaking, and then I will just jot down key points, and that will help me shape a script. I would urge you to find ways to practice, and whether that's small groups and recording yourself, however you need. And do any of you use slides or visuals with your presentations? Sometimes, maybe. One thing, yes, never read your script, Laura. That way you're going to take the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say specifically about slides is that you should never be reading just text off your slide, because what's interesting about this is your audience members can actually read the text much faster than you're going to be able to say it. Listeners can understand 125 to 150 words per minute, and readers can understand 250 to 300 words per minute. So if you're just reading what you wrote, no one's going to listen to you, because it seems also like you're not in control. So it's not warm or competent. Do any of you already have a rehearsal strategy that you practice? If you have any tips, you can drop those in the chat. Because I'm a big proponent that practicing is practicing the right way. And that's not just practicing in the same performance conditions, it's also getting grounded, using your body correctly. It's not just sort of rushing through a script and sort of thinking that you're done. What else can I add? Actually, I just did it. Ums and you knows. In my experience, these filler words often come from rushing, and you have to really slow down and give yourself time to think and speak. Again, listeners can only understand 125 to 150 words per minute, so there's really time to slow down. Practicing in front of a mirror is a great strategy. I make my boyfriend listen to my scripts all the time, just to have another pair of human eyes and ears on me. In terms of enunciating, tongue twisters can often really help with that as well. Making sure that you're heard. Sometimes when you have another human there on the other side, they can really call you out should you be mumbling or muttering. And just to wrap up, I could do a whole nother course. Maybe this is the level 2, is the body language course, but body language, we really want to be grounded and relaxed when we're presented. Again, that's what helps us communicate warmth and competence. That's eye contact, that's relaxing our shoulders, getting settled in our body. And when you take this moment to sort of check in a bit more somatically, it can also help you notice if you've got anything else going on, like your foot jiggling or you're clicking your tongue, because we want to be angled and open to our audience, not facing our slides, not buried in our script. We want to feel the wings on our back. We want to really speak from behind us. Exactly. Again, I could teach it. Maybe that's all of level 2, but I could talk a lot about the body and how it's used in presentations, but we'll press onwards. So quickly reviewing what we've covered. Audience-centric, the art of connection, use the spark line, the explanation, or the hook, meet payoff structure, or another story structure if you fancy. Connecting on an emotional level, which is lots of eye contact. Involve your imagination, your own personal anecdotes, let your humanity in the room, and practice. Really got to rehearse. Any questions, comments, concerns, revelations that came out of that? Can you share the books? Yes, I can share those. Maybe I can send those to Christy.
And if you have a question, feel free to unmute and ask.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Kate, somebody else earlier had asked if you could share the slides.
I think I can share the slides. Yeah.
Hey, what are some strategies that you can use when, despite your best efforts, things are going awry, or you're not connecting with your audience or making your point, or you're getting nervous, or any of the dozens of things that can go wrong during a presentation on any given day?
So many things. Well, what kind of awry? There's so many different kinds of awry. I'd love to hear about one in particular.
Well, there's so many. There's
I know.
yeah, there's technical things. There's you forgot what day of the week it is or where you are. There's lots of, you get nervous. Sometimes I'm extremely relaxed presenting, and other times, for whatever reason, I'm nervous, and it's hard to maintain your focus or get back on track, those kinds of things.
So for nerves and technical issues, I think, and even nerves, they become issues when we start to try to rush ahead of them or try to gloss over them and try to quickly, act as though that never happened. But I do feel like sometimes those are opportunities to let our humanity in, and also just a reminder to shake things off and not take ourselves so seriously. So if a bit of technology isn't working, truly everyone in the room usually can sympathize with this sort of issue. So you may just want to take a moment to acknowledge verbal. Sometimes I say it out loud. Wow, this is what's happening. And sometimes I even ask for help if I know someone there. I'm teaching college freshmen. They already know technology better than I do, so I can often ask for help if I need it. But I always find that in presenters actually a little bit winning. Tech can be a bugger. So, but in terms of nerves, if I catch myself rushing, it's really about the breath for me. That's the quickest and fastest way to really get myself back. Feeling my seat on the chair, feeling my spine. And I often underestimate the power of 1 or 2 breaths. It's wild how much we think that we often have to fill every second of a presentation with chat, but actually some pauses really lets things integrate. And also, if you take an extra few beats to think about what you're going to say before you say it, it actually does draw the audience in even more. Some of the most thoughtful speakers I know will not speak until they're absolutely ready, and they don't mind if the conversation stops for a good 20, 30, 60 seconds. So if I'm feeling myself rushing, I'll take a good breath and I'll take a big exhale. I'll also, if I'm standing, I will tuck my pelvis a little bit underneath me. It'll help me breathe a little bit better. I hope those 2 little points are useful. I can speak to all kinds of awry. Everything that's happened, I've gone through it. Lost control of a class is really interesting because I use different strategies depending on what's happening, but often I feel like when I lose control of the class, someone's trying to break the class in a way. They're trying to sort of upend your thesis, or they're trying to poke holes in your hypothesis. And I find that when I actually invite that in, and try to go all the way on the journey with that person, it actually leads to a lot of Socratic discussion and a deeper understanding, and it becomes something much deeper than this battle of the wills. I hope that makes sense. I'm only being a little bit vague, but I'm thinking in particular about teaching students and when they ask provocative questions, and I think they're hot stuff for asking this provocative question, but then you actually fold that into what you're saying. It can really change the whole class. It can really change the tone of the whole room. Okay, Lori's mentioned, thank you, Lori, first of all. And presenting in person and doing over the internet. The internet is so difficult to be, it's so difficult. I'm still working on it, as you can see with this presentation. For me, one of the ways that I know that I always shut down as a listener on the other end of presentations online, if there's no engagement or involvement or chances for me to chime in, I will definitely open another browser. I will tune out. It's sort of I think how my brain's been wired to work on computers, which is sort of always having 7 tabs open and flitting back and forth. So I find it exceptionally difficult to focus. But I to counter this, for me as a presenter, I'm often trying to ask for audience participation at every juncture and really try to get people to chime back, use the chat function, which is very, very useful, especially for shy participants. I've had a lot of success with that so much. But you still, the same sort of principles of slowing down, letting your humanity in, still apply. Eye contact does not, but there you go. There's something else. Any more questions?
Great. Well, thank you again, Kate. It's always,
Yeah.
you know, this
Thanks
is
for
as
doing
useful.
this.
It's as useful the second time around as it was the first, especially as I have to revise and present a presentation I've given as a guest lecturer. So I've been thinking, oh, it needs to be refreshed. It's kind of stale, and that's next week. So I'll be keeping these principles in mind as I dive in to edit that and try to make something better out of it. So thanks so much.
Amazing.
And,
I put my email here and my website. I offer individual small group workshops in communication, so you can visit my website too. I also wanted to say, if you have any thoughts after this presentation and about what you would like to hear more about in potentially storytelling for scientists round 2, please let me know or let Christine know. And yeah, last slide. I love this quote. We tell stories in order to feel at home in the universe. And so I feel like you all can do this. I'm sending you off today with doing this through story. Your storytellers, tell the story. Thank you all.